All right. Good morning and welcome to the CLLA podcast, Outstanding Accounts. My name is Richard Payne. I am the president of the Commercial Law League of America, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Tim Wong, who is also a member of the league. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Good morning, Richard. What's going on?
Well, we're about to delve into the world of podcasts here at the Commercial Law League. The league's been around for over 100 years, and this is our first foray into podcasts. So, welcome aboard, and let's get things started. So, I thought we'd start off by how you find yourself where you are today. Brief discussion of your professional background, and was this something you always wanted to do, or how did you end up here?
Oh, you want my story? Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Happy. All right. Yeah. So I am an attorney, but I didn't want to be an attorney growing up. That wasn't really my dream. My dream was to be an actor. I got the lead in fourth grade doing musical theater. Got a standing ovation because that's what you give 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, right? And I remember standing on stage going, "Ooh, I like this." So I took 12 years of voice and acting. College, I majored in theater. I thought I was going to be famous. Went to try out for Broadway shows, working, living in the city, and 2 dozen failed auditions later, not call back, nothing. My grandfather looks at me and says, "Law school or business school?" Well, went to law school. I did entertainment law. And I worked at, some major, studios, record labels. Hated it. Bounced around. I was not, cut for the in-house corporate life. Far too entrepreneurial, I think. And so I left that and, basically moved back home to Long Island, New York, where I still am now, and, the story was basically this: I wanted to find a job that could pay some student loans, and I found the firm 7 minutes from my house, Smith Corrode, which is, the firm I'm at now. I found Smith Corrode doing collections, didn't know what collections was, but, 7 minutes from my house, and it'll pay some student loans. So, and that was, 25 years ago.
Well, I I think speaking on behalf of people who know you, Tim, the fact that you had an entertainment background could not come as a surprise to anybody.
Probably true, probably true.
So tell me, what led to you becoming involved in the commercial law league?
All right, the senior partner of Smith Corrode at the time, so Smith Corrode was founded in 1930, so it's been around, and those guys passed before you and I were born. They're long gone. But Robert Levy, was the senior partner. He joined the firm in like 1985. So when I came here in 2000, he was the senior partner, and he had been a league member for a long, long time, for decades. Eastern Region chair. He'd been on the board of governors as an attorney board member. Um, and one of the funny things is he wrote a newsletter for the creditors' rights section, a column for the newsletter where it was technology, where he would write something back in like he showed me some articles back in like 98, 99 that he had written in 98, 99 about dictate software that does takes dictation, and you don't need a handheld tape recorder anymore, cassette recorder, because that's what he had always used. And he talked about putting on a headset and dictating in there. He had talked about wireless keyboards as this new avant-garde thing. So he was writing about technology and ways to make yourself more effective. I think he would never have imagined, he passed in 2017, but he would never have imagined, the Zoom world that we live in now, or the podcast world that we live in now, where everything's wireless everywhere you go, and how technology moves so quickly. So he was, many thought of as the avant-garde guy back in the late 90s. When I joined the firm after a year or two, he basically said, "All right, you know what? You got to go to this thing. You got to go to these conventions. Go with me." Um, and we made kind of a rule, which is he and I should not be at the dinner at the same dinner. We should not be at the same place at the same time. We should spread our wings so that we can, cover the different people and meet different people rather than having dinner at the same time. So that's one of the things that we concertedly did. The funny thing about that is, there's a great league member that many of us know, Bo Hayes, who is one of my mentors as well. And Bo said, "You got to do one better and don't have dinner with the same people every night because you'll know Bob has dinner with the same 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 6 friends every single convention, every single night. Change it up." Have dinner with different people, meet up with different people. And so that's when I really started getting involved. And as you know, I'm not shy. So I started just developing, you know, made my friends, but then I would often have go to dinner and say, "You know what? Let's leave 2 spots open and meet new people and bring them in." So that's how I got started in the league. And, I was, in the young members, now new members section, where one of my goals was party. Let's keep people entertained. Let's socialize. Let's not just make everything stuffy and quiet and professional all the time. Let's do fun things too.
That leads me into my next point, which was, can you starting off with going with your mentor? How did you progress through the league, and what various positions have you had?
In a summary sort of way. So I started in the young member section writing a newsletter article myself. I called it Tales from the Front, which is ridiculous things that happened to me in court. And that became something that when we had a magazine, which is now Commercial Law World, I started writing Tales from the Front for Commercial Law World. And I've been doing that now since almost the beginning. So I've had, oh my God, countless articles and columns about things that have happened in court or negotiations, trials and tribulations. And what I like to do is I like to write it with a little pop culture flair, a little bit of humor, a little theater, right? Of course. And obviously by doing that, it doesn't betray any kind of attorney-client privilege. Um, and then what happened was I got a phone call from a judge in, I believe it was South Carolina, and he said that he is the editor in chief of the textbook Judgment Enforcement that's published by Wolters Kluwer. And he said, "Look, we want to have various chapters written by different state practitioners." He was a federal court judge, so he wrote the federal chapter. And he says, "Would you write the New York chapter?" And I went, what? Why me?" And he said, "I read your column. I can't stop laughing." And I went, "All right, well, yeah, but I can't really write a textbook. I mean, my stuff's gonna be sarcastic and silly." And he goes, "No, I want you to write the textbook so it'll be interesting." "Okay, you got it." So I started writing a textbook. So that's one thing that happened. And as a result, I think, of that column, I also started, doing a lot of in participating, raising my hand to speak on panels. Um, I may not have been able at that time, early in my career to drive the conversations, but I could talk about what had happened to me, and I could and would do some research on how to relate that to the law and how to turn that into an education seminar and participate on panels. Obviously, a 2002, 2003 Tim Wan is very different than a 2026 Tim Wan, where I could talk for 3 hours in front of 1,000 people without batting an eyelash. I never got stage fright, but I still did not necessarily have the confidence in the subject matter. I didn't necessarily consider myself a subject matter expert. Now I feel like I'm more opinionated about the subject matter of commercial litigation and collections than anyone else in the country, right? Um, but so I started with that speaking and writing is where we started. Um, and then along the way, I rose up the ranks, both through the Eastern region and the young member section, all the way up to chair, served on the board of governors, ran for the attorney board member spot, recording secretary, and then became president in 2019 of the league. And was the fortunate or unfortunate president when COVID-19 hit, and in 2020 we could not have an annual convention, so I got to stay on as a second year and got to get involved in a lot of great legislative activities. There was a lot affecting our industry during that time, and I really got to cut my teeth there. The other thing that we did is because of everything, even in 2019, I was able to help reinvent certain financial aspects of the league in looking at it from a business perspective, as opposed to, hey, let's just do what we've always been doing. As president, I was able to do some fun, different things. One thing I want to, like I always talk about is, traditionally when you go to a lawyer convention, and you have a cocktail party, you're going to get your beef Wellington, your shrimp cocktail. Maybe if you're lucky, you get the lamb chops, and it's extremely expensive at these big stuffy hotels. Which, at the end of the day, if you're at a hotel in Chicago, Canada, New York, or Florida, it's basically the same hotel. The interior is the interior, and there's no outside windows. So at my convention in Florida, where I was sworn in as president, we kind of turned it on its ear and said, let's not have that traditional cocktail party. Let's do it poolside. And rather than beef Wellington and shrimp cocktail, let's do sliders, hot dogs, mac and cheese. We had enough budget to have a steel drum band. People were literally in the swimming pool with a cocktail in their hand, talking to their friends. And we thought that that was such a great way to use the location, as well as just to make something memorable and different. The other thing we did in New York was, rather than having a hotel convention, I mean, New York City is New York City. There's always something to do. There's always some event going on. There's always some music or show or shopping, of course. So rather than trap everyone in a hotel, we shifted it where we used the venue for the education, and then used different venues for the other aspects of the convention. And I think that business model shifted how we behave. And so now, as a result, um, I've come back and run for treasurer and was elected as treasurer of the league to help look at things there from a more, I guess you could say, financially responsible perspective.
Right. Great. And is it true you're the only two-term president of the league, aren't you?
No, I think I'm the only two consecutive term
Okay.
president. We did have Robert Bernstein from Pennsylvania, who was president, and then after several years of being still somewhat involved in the league but not on the board, we had a president-elect who got ill, and he stepped in to take the spot.
I see.
So he was a two-term president, but separated by probably a decade or so.
Right. Okay. Um,
I also heard a rumor that back in 1895 or whenever the league was founded, the
yeah.
first president served two terms because they didn't have it. They just created themselves, but I don't count that.
Okay.
I call myself the two-term consecutive.
All right, fair enough. I knew you'd be unique anyway.
I'm unique
um,
for lots of reasons. No,
yeah, yeah. So, my next question is about the perception of lawyers and agencies in the commercial collections and collections world generally. What's your sense of the public perception of that?
well, the public perception hates us, right? The public hates us. They think that we're taking money from people. They think that we're, throwing people out of their homes. I suspect that there are people who, some of the firms, some of our members who do that. I personally don't do evictions or foreclosures, but I know that there are some members who do. Um, but I look at it from a perspective of this: is at some point, everyone that we're quote unquote going after in a legal manner, of course, whether it's through a collection agency or an attorney filing a lawsuit and getting a judgment and enforcing that judgment. At, at some point, everyone made an agreement, signed a contract. They made a promise. So my daughter, who's now going to college next year, when she was in kindergarten, she asked me, "Daddy, what do you do? What does a lawyer do?" And there are lots of lawyers, lots of different kinds of lawyers. Some who are putting people in jail, some people are doing family divorces. What do you do? And I thought about it, and I came up with the phrase: "What we do is we make people keep their promises." And I think that that kind of rings true now. I think a lot of our clients, my firm's clients in particular, tend to be small business owners, mom and pop shops. We represent a lot of contractors. So if contractors, family landlords, local medical providers, not giant hospitals, as well as, of course, your larger commercial business, but a digital marketing guy who's got a small shop and a few people sign a contract with someone and they're not happy, that customer is not happy with the results. Well, that wasn't in the contract. What the results were, you still made a promise to pay. Or the landscaper we represent, the landscaper, someone goes and hires the landscaper to mow their lawn, and for after 2 months decides not to pay or bounces a check. Those are things that happen quite often. We've had situations where the electrician didn't get paid because the light switch wasn't the right height that they wanted, even though it was designed by code and following the architect's plans. At the end of the day, all these people made a promise, and the people that we are representing are people that deserve to get paid for the work or goods that they provided. That's how
Right.
I feel.
Damn. And I mean, and obviously, if nobody paid their bills, the entire economy would collapse. So, it's something that kind of keeps everything rolling, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll just on one of those things is during during 2020, there was some governmental action to say shut down debt collection entirely in the U.S. where there was a bill proposed that would not only prevent collections during the period of the pandemic, but for another 18 months after the conclusion. And that to me was astounding because, first of all, it went on for another 3 years for federal funding purposes. However, it would shut down any kind of debt collection lawsuits in the whole. So I actually was able to speak to some legislators, and I gave them this example. We represent a sushi fish company, a fisherman, a company that every morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, is getting up to fresh to fish for fresh fish. At which point they have a courier who then delivers it to restaurants and grocery stores in New York to sell that day, that week. And then at the end of the month, the fisherman sends a bill to the restaurant. The restaurant, over the course of that month, has sold that fish for profit. Obviously they prepare it, or the grocery store, prepares it however they want to. Um, and then they sell it. And now at the end of the month, they're supposed to pay my fisherman's bill. The debt collection prohibition, or if we weren't able to continue as collections attorneys, that fisherman would no longer be able to rely on extending that credit, would no longer be able to rely on that courier, and would say, all right, you know what, it's cash on delivery, or no, or you're not getting the fish at all. And restaurants don't have it in their business model to do that. They're relying on the receipt of that food so they can sell it for that profit. I mean, obviously some restaurants, but when I expressed that to some of the legislators, they stopped and went, "Oh, we didn't even think about it that way."
Right. But that's it, isn't it? I mean, if there's no collections, there's no credit.
Right.
And then you're into a cash-based society, which, would be considerably different than from what we have.
Right, and
Uh,
that would favor only those that had, piles of
Lots of
cash,
cash. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You would essentially freeze out your small business owners. You'd freeze out the entrepreneurs who are relying on that. Forget about it. It wouldn't work.
Yeah. Okay. You've mentioned a few times about commercial collections. What's the distinction between a commercial collection attorney and a retail collection attorney?
So I actually think there's kind of three buckets, and this is me being opinionated. Commercial collections, obviously business to business, B2B. And then you've got what I call consumer light versus consumer credit. Consumer credit, both of them are business to consumer, B2C. They would be subject to your federal Fair Debt Collections Practices Act and Consumer Finance Protection Bureau rules, things like that. They'd still be subject to those federal laws. But I draw the distinction between consumer credit and consumer light. Consumer credit are essentially companies that are loaning money, usually by credit card, to a consumer to then purchase goods or services from someone else. So if you're going to the local grocery store, you're dropping a credit card that goes to a bank, that bank is extending you credit. That is different than the example I just gave about the landscaper. The landscaper is not extending you credit. The landscaper is mowing the lawn while you're not at home and maybe leaving a handwritten invoice in your mailbox. They're not extending you credit. The other one is a landlord, and I'm not talking a big giant commercial landlord, which I do represent, but we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the big corporate residential landlords. I'm talking about the mom and pop shops. They're almost always saying rent should be paid on the first of the month for that coming month, right? So you're not having a situation where you're creating rent as a credit in arrears. You're making that payment in advance for rent. So you're not extending any credit. So I think that there's this distinction between what I like to call consumer light versus consumer credit. Consumer credit is very much under the microscope by the federal government, and rightfully so, because they're charging interest and whatnot. They're compounding interest. They're financial products, and the creditors that are extending that credit are generally large financial institutions. Very different than the consumer light, which includes your mom and pop shops, right? Your body shops, your contractors, your electricians, landscapers, masons, things like that.
Right. Okay. All right. So getting back to you now, you mentioned before about what the firm was like when you joined. Can you just briefly track the evolution of your firm from then to now?
Sure, sure. Well, I mentioned that we were that Bob Levy had been the senior partner since joined the firm in 1985. He was the senior partner when I joined in 2000. When he passed in 2017, we were renting a 4,000 square foot office in Comac, Long Island, which was the same furniture from 1985, the same carpet from 1985. Um, and we had 11 full-time employees since 2017. In the last 10 years, we are now 28 employees, approximately, give or take. Some are contractors. But we're out here. We bought a building, a standalone commercial building out here in Smithtown, Long Island, about 20 minutes east, or I'd say 10 minutes east of our old office on Main Street, where we've got a nice standalone building. And since then, I've acquired or merged with 5 other collections law firms. In many situations, it was individuals who are retiring and their succession plan either did not exist at all or it fell through. And so we I guess you could say we absorbed or merged with them. And there were generally people, sometimes it was voluntary, where someone said, "Oh, you know what? I need my exit strategy. I don't know what it is. I'm retiring. I'd like to meet up with you, Tim, and let's see if we can forge a relationship." Another, it was a situation where someone where the solo practitioner had a health issue and needed another firm to step in. He did not have a junior partner or anything like that. So we were able to step in and help him and undertake those cases. And we've had, along the gamut, those kind of things. So 5 firms have come into our fold. Um, and that's part of how we've expanded. We also are now I'm admitted in New York and Connecticut. And part of that is because we saw a need in Connecticut. We had a lot of clients. For example, the border between New York and Connecticut is right there. And so what often happens is you have someone whose the business is in New York, but the guarantor is in Connecticut. So we were finding it difficult to now find someone to split fees with, and we were getting a larger volume of, like I said, the consumer light cases where they were, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 cases, which I didn't necessarily, I wasn't able to necessarily find someone in Connecticut where it was cost effective for them to take those cases. So we undertook those ourselves.
Makes sense. So that gives rise to my next question. When you're talking about merging and acquiring firms, talk about the trend of mergers in commercial law firms generally and commercial collection law firms as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easy because, as you know, the vast majority of our cases are on a contingent fee. So it's very easy to say, okay, we're just going to split the contingent fee. It's legal in the U.S. to do that. When you're attorneys, you could share the fees with another attorney. So what we ended up doing was bucketing it. Where if it was, an old judgment that the prior firm had gotten, it would be, split a certain way. Whereas if it was a new case that came in from their client that we had never had before, it would be bucketed where we would take more of a fee and give them less of a fee. Um, but it was something we needed to work on, and then if obviously there's a range in between. But the transition was difficult for every single one. There was always some growing pains. Luckily, I have some pretty good staff who was able to manage it, and they learned from the first time. So we kind of have it down.
So I think it's safe to say you're well known in the league for your can-do attitude and your sense of fun. So talk to me about your approach to the commercial law league.
Oh, wow. Well, I've made some lifelong friends. I've made some really great bonds. I'd like to consider you as one of those, Richard. But, I to me, it was always less about let me get business. It was always about let me be with people who are of like mind. Let me be with people that are of the same desire as I have. I would gravitate to other people who are trying to build their business. I would gravitate to people that are trying to like improve themselves, not necessarily people that were just, swimming along and floating along without any kind of change. So I think the way that I approached the league was what opportunities do I have and what opportunities going to help other people have. And it's been a big part of my business. It's been a big part of my life. Had I not gotten the opportunities of the league or taken advantage of the opportunities that the league gave me, I certainly would not be where I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, for people who aren't in the league and who might be listening to this, I think, and you really owe it to yourself to check it out. It's a great organization. So tell me, what do you hope to do next in the league? Is there
I'm
anything
done. I'm done. No,
that
no.
that I don't believe?
No, no, no. I think one of the most important things is that commercial law is a much broader um umbrella, let's say, than merely just collections. There's so much more that goes into it. And I've spent some time lecturing and perhaps to some controversy about, for example, like a venue clause provision. We've had great debates about that, or other, and that all reflects back to what you're doing on a more on a corporate level, on a business level, and what business decisions you're making. So I think that education and that approach expands more than just collections. Let's try to get it earlier on. Let's speak to other people in the commercial law continuum, right? We already have a very strong bankruptcy section to supplement the, obviously the majority of people are collections, and majority of commercial collections, but we have a strong bankruptcy presence who are dealing on both sides of the bankruptcy fence, but still part of commercial law. And I think there's unserved and unrepresented areas where some people do that work, but aren't as widespread or organized about it. And I think one of those areas is, corporate counsel, or even outside corporate counsel. I do a good amount of that. Mergers and acquisitions. I think there's a lot of commercial real estate transactions. All these things could come in together to integrate with what we already do. And I think that could be very valuable. So I think you ask what's next. I think awareness of these other areas and perhaps expanding that umbrella to reach out a little further is what I'd be trying to do.
That's perfect. I see we're just about up to the 30-minute guideline here, so I've
Yep.
got one final kind of catch-all question, and
Sure.
then we can wrap it up. So my final question for you is, what would you like to see the Commercial Law League become?
Wow. I would love to see us more connected and engaged with every single member of the league. I would love it where we've got an online community now. We're doing this podcast to try to increase that engagement. I know that not every person, every member shows up physically to go to our national convention in Chicago. So now we've got smaller regional meetings, and I don't care if they're 30 people. I would encourage, and I would love the idea of having even smaller get-togethers. Let's take advantage of geography. Let's take advantage of the fact that we have a national, if not international, footprint. So if I'm in New York and I want to have a dinner, let me have a dinner with 5 or 10 people from the league. It's just increase that level of engagement and activity, and I think that will create a rising tide that will lift all boats, proverbially. And I would love to see more engagement. I don't enjoy when I have someone who says, "I'll see you in November and I'll see you in May at the New York convention and the Chicago convention." I'm like, "You're not going to see me any other time? Let's get together. Let's do a Zoom. Let's chat. Let's, I think that the online community, as well as the regions, when the regions get strong, they can increase that kind of activity. That's what I'd like to see."
Excellent. Well, I think that's a tremendous note to wrap this up with, and I hope everybody's enjoyed this as much as I have. Thank you very much, Tim.
You're
Great to
welcome.
see you, and I'll see you again on Zoom probably in the next few days, as opposed to in Chicago in the
That's
spring.
all right. That's all right. Great to see you,
All
Richard.
right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
I'm
All right,
honored to be on this.
sure.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.